to see all of you here this evening. Again, welcome to tonight's webinar on creating opportunities for family engagement, which subtitled here includes during remote or hybrid learning. But as programs start to return full-time, it will still be a while before we are back to our pre-pandemic normal. So hopefully these tips and ideas presented carry over to what your program looks like today and in the future. Again, my name is Megan Horwath. I have been working in early childhood, specifically in Preschool for All programs for 20 years now. I've been doing so in various capacities, from teacher to teacher coach, mentor, higher ed faculty, and coordinator of professional development. Most recently, pre-pandemic, I was a part-time blended Preschool for All teacher in the morning and a parent coordinator for the same program in the afternoon. Currently, I am the designated remote teacher, so I have classes in the AM and the PM. With full-time teaching, I was given a pass on the parent coordinator piece. However, I know that it's too valuable to our youngest learners to put that on the back burner. So I voluntarily kept it up as much as possible this year. And while it does look very different than it has in the past, it is still doable. So that's a little bit about me. We're going to go ahead and see who we have on our webinar with us today. So this is our first poll. Karen's pulled it up for us. If you could go ahead and vote for what your role is or choose your role there, that would be great. And I'll give everybody a second to do that. Great, so it looks like we have quite a few family parent support specialists on here. Actually, it's about even with our teachers now. Fantastic. We have a few administrators. Welcome. Thank you. And a few paraprofessionals as well. Great. Good to see you all on here. We're going to go ahead and switch to our next slide. Oh, sorry, one more poll first. And if you could tell me what type of program you are currently working in. Okay, it looks like we have mostly PFA programs, quite a few expansion, a few Head Start, childcare, community-based. Great, so we have a good variety on here. Fantastic. I have another quick question for you. There's no poll, but if you look up top, you'll see a little hand icon. If you want to raise your hand for me if your program is still doing some form of remote or hybrid learning at this time. Go ahead and hit your hand up there up top. We're going to see. Just going to take a quick look over at the participants. And so if your hand is not raised, and I see some of you on a mobile device, I'm going to assume that you guys are all in for full-time learning. Okay, it looks about 50-50. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Always good to know who the audience is. Here's our agenda for today so you know where we're going. We're going to start with a review on why family engagement is important and what standards of effective practice are. I'll have you reflect on what your program goals are around family engagement and what needs to be adjusted for reaching parents during this time. And again, some strategies or tips might very well carry over post-pandemic when we're finally out of this to reach those hard-to-reach parents that we sometimes have difficulty engaging. We'll compare the then and now, so pre and during pandemic, what you can no longer do that was effective before the pandemic, what can you do better now that we have a different environment that we're in, and what stays the same. We will discuss current barriers to family engagement, and I'll give you the opportunity to share what is working for you in your programs, as we always learn best from each other. And I know you guys have a wealth of information and great ideas out there, so I want to make sure that I give you guys a chance to share what's been working in your programs. Hello, we have a student on too. Fantastic. And finally, we'll discuss some tips, strategies, and resources to help you promote family engagement within your program. So we're going to start with a little self-reflection. You do not have to type anything in the chat box. I just want you to think in your own head to kind of get you set for our time here together. I want you to think about your program's overall goal or goals for family engagement. If you don't know what those are, that's okay. We'll have some ideas on the next slide for you to take back to your programs. Or you can talk with somebody in your program when we're done who does know or who is responsible for the family engagement. So you know what your overall mission and goals are for your program. So now think about what family engagement has looked like in your program for the past 13 months. Have you been able to engage families? Have you been doing anything for them, or have you said, you know what, we just need to focus on getting kids to school either remotely or in person, and the family engagement has kind of slid a little while? So what has it looked like for the past 13 months in your program? Are you still meeting those program goals that you have for family engagement? Does your definition of family engagement need to be adjusted? Has it been adjusted this year? Are your goals still the same? I would think that likely they are, just the road to getting there is a little bit different than we're used to. This is its own webinar you can probably find out there, but let's take a peek at the Illinois State Board of Education's Family Engagement Framework, which has 4 main principles. 1, districts and schools develop a family engagement system that cultivates and empowers adults to jointly support student growth, address any barriers to learning, and ensure college and career readiness. So basically, we're working together with families. This is most likely part of your mission, and it should be relatively unchanged in our current environment. We must still acknowledge the important role of families and focus on that to help work to improve student outcomes. Second, district and programs or school personnel create a welcoming environment for families that is responsive to student and family needs, and those needs can be very different this year than they have been in years past. We do this through developing trust, shared responsibility, respect, reaching out to families, and engaging students and families from diverse backgrounds. Third, district, program, and school personnel engage in ongoing and meaningful two-way exchanges of information with families to support student learning and development. So it's not just the teachers or programs feeding the information to families, but we really want it to be a two-way exchange of information. To enhance communication, it should be clear, constructive, ongoing through a variety of ways. And we'll talk about some of those communication strategies in a bit. We should be sharing info on standards and curriculum, student expectations and activities, policies and procedures, and how parents can enhance their student learning at home. Fourth and finally, programs should include parents in the decision-making process. We want to empower parents to be involved and encourage participation and problem solving. We don't just want that superficial involvement. We want them to really feel a part of the program and a part of their child's educational experience. So once they've moved on from us and they've gone to kindergarten, elementary school, middle school, high school, they're still involved in their child's education. And I think being involved in this decision-making process has been a struggle during the pandemic because it's hard to allow parents to feel like they have a say in the decisions that are being made when sometimes the teachers don't even have decisions or have a say in the decisions being made this year. So this is one area that I do think it has been a bit of a struggle during the pandemic. Here I've pulled some keywords from NAEYC, the National Association for the Education of Young Children's Principles of Family Engagement. This was one of your handouts, your resources. The first one goes along with the last point from the ISB framework, which is to involve families with decision-making and goal setting, not only for their child, but for the program as a whole and the wider early childhood community. Programs should invite families to actively take part in making decisions concerning their child's education. Teachers and families should jointly set goals for the children's education and learning, both at home and at school. Programs also invite families to actively participate in making decisions about the program itself. And again, this is one area that has been a bit of a struggle, I believe. And we also want families to feel like they can be a part of advocating for early childhood education in the wider community, maybe through parent advisory committees, surveys, advocacy efforts. We'll talk a bit more about those in a minute. Again, we see here the importance of two-way communication. Strategies allow for both school and family-initiated communication that is timely and continuous. Conversations focus on a child's educational experience as well as the larger program. Communication should take multiple forms and reflect each family's language of preference. So anytime we can provide written or verbal communication with families in their most comfortable language, it's really advantageous to do so. Programs and teachers should engage with families in ways that are truly reciprocal. We benefit from shared resources and information. Programs invite families to share their unique knowledge and skills and encourage active participation in the life of the school in whatever capacity you are operating this year. Programs also use learning activities at home and in the community to enhance each child's early learning experience and encourage and support families' efforts of creating a learning environment beyond the classroom. This one is kind of easy peasy now that we've been in this pandemic, because I would assume for a lot of you there has been at some point in the past year where your students have been learning at home. So we have been able to get those learning activities into the homes and support families in being able to do that. So it's just a matter of keeping that up once they are back in the classroom and really helping parents to engage in those learning activities throughout the day at home with their child. Finally, programs implement a comprehensive program-level system of family engagement by creating engagement policies and practices and ensure that teachers, administrators, and other staff receive the supports they need to fully engage families in an effective way. All right, the next few slides, I'm going to have you use your hand icon. I want you to think about what you see on the slide and raise your hand if you feel that you've been able to engage in some sort of family activities that reflect the picture. So let's start with the first one. So thinking about this past year only, so not pre-pandemic, just in this past school year since last March. Raise your hand if you have had any family engagement opportunities that look something like this. Partnering with community organizations for face-to-face opportunities, such as a story time at a local library. Any hands? Oh, Beatrice is able to. Great. Let's see. All right, we got about 40 people on, and we've got just a few hands up. And that's what I thought we were going to see. So it's quite possible that you're still continuing to partner with community organizations, and it's super important, but most likely it's all been done virtually. Yep, they say in the chat, no face-to-face, all virtual. Yep. All right, how about this one? Raise your hand if in the past year you've had some sort of curriculum night or parent-child night where programs set up a variety of age-appropriate activities where kids and families come in and you're packed in shoulder to shoulder, sharing materials and engaging in wonderful early childhood appropriate activities. Got one, I see one hand. Yep, these were the good old days, right? When we can have so many parents and families in engaging in activities together. Absolutely, yep. Angela says only online. And that's what we've had to do this year, yep. All right, next one. How about this? Have you had any family engagement this year that's looked like this, where you send groups of parents, say on a bus together down to Springfield to advocate for early childhood and the importance? It's super important. We need to continue advocating, but our pandemic has limited our abilities to do it in the ways we typically do. No need to give up on it though. We can still write letters, we can do things virtually, we can put meetings together. But again, that's something we haven't seen. All right, a few more. All right, how about this? It is the week of the young child this week. And sometimes programs have had large celebrations where they invite all families from multiple schools to go to a gym and say, see a children's singer or a magician, some sort of fun activity for children and families together. I don't think I see any hands. Nope, this would be a super spreader event, right? We would be very concerned about that this day. But how about raise your hands? Did you plan any special activities this week for the week of the young child? Either for your So we got a few, yep. So we're still able to engage in fun activities for the kids. We just have to, and families, we just have to do it in a very different way. We had a virtual yoga field trip for my program today, and the families loved it. Oh, Angela, I love it. Biggest accomplishment was reopening the sand table. Perfect. All right, raise your hand if your family engagement has looked something like this year. How about that? Maybe they have their cameras on, not necessarily cameras off. Let's see. So a few more hands on that. Yep, this could be a parent education night. It could be parent-teacher conferences. It could be your parent advisory committees. Anything that you might have done in person, it now might look like this. And yes, we hope that those cameras are on so we can at least see them. We have had to shift almost everything, if not everything, onto the online platform. All right, a couple more. Raise your hand if this has been a part of your family engagement. So you, the administrator, the teacher, the family educator, creating recorded videos where you're a little box in the bottom of the screen talking, but you're recording it, so you're talking as if they're there and you're hoping they're listening to you, but it's just you talking to the computer. So very much a Steve from Blue's Clues or Dora the Explorer type experience. And maybe you're using this for curriculum night, introducing your families to the program, letting them know what's going on. So a couple hands up for that one as well. Do one more. All right. Ooh. How about this one? Family engagement, kids and parents on screen together. Let's see if you've been able to do this. Yep, this is what we have been able to do most of this year, right? If you're doing remote or hybrid learning, you've got your parents most likely sitting right next to the kids as they're learning, hopefully being able to assist them. But it's also offered the opportunity to do some of those parent trainings, that parent education at home with the kids there at the same time. So these two cute little story. We were talking about cleaning up after yourself at home, I think, and the little girl said she was so excited. She's like, oh yes, I do this, this, and this, and mom is sitting right behind her just shaking her head in the computer, and the little girl saw her mom shaking her head. She's like, oh man, busted. So parents and kids this year are really having to negotiate new relationships and experiences. Parents are not used to hearing what their kids say at school, nor are kids used to having their parents looking over their shoulder at all times at school. So it's a very different dynamic, but what an amazing opportunity for us to glimpse into the lives of families daily and improve our interactions and experiences with families. So, and I hope you guys are all reading the chat. Your colleagues have great ideas of some things that they have done this year for families. Keep it up, keep putting them in there. I'll have a question in a little bit where I'm going to have you guys put all of your great ideas into one place so Karen can capture us for that. But as something pops in your head, feel free to keep typing it into that chat box. So again, families, and not just parents, whole families are having to be involved in various ways this year. These are two sets of siblings from my classroom. The little kids, the youngest learners, are seeing their older siblings doing their schoolwork and see what they have to do to be successful. And sometimes the older ones are even having to help out the younger ones with their classes. Again, all families have to be involved in different and incredible ways this year. Even those families who don't always show up every day, who have added challenges, we want to continue supporting them and believe in them because we know they can be impactful. So Karen has a quick poll for us. She's going to pull it up. How would you describe your current relationship with families this year? Do you feel you have a better relationship with families this year, the same relationship, or is it more challenging? So thinking about your relationship with the families pandemic year versus pre-pandemic. Interesting. Okay, so say the majority of you feel that you have a more challenging relationship with families. Go ahead and type in, if you could, why you find you have a more challenging relationship with families this year. And if you have a better relationship, you can go ahead and type that in the chat box as well. And I'll give you guys a minute to type. Parents are zoomed out, absolutely. More pressing priorities. Yeah, so these two families on the screen, I can tell you those families both have 6 kids, all e-learning, so their priorities are, they're scattered. It depends on the day. So no opportunity to see parents at passing and drop off. Absolutely, Jill. That does make a difference, especially when you're trying to develop that relationship. Lauren says it's about 50-50. Some are great relationships and lost some others. Yeah, it's those hard to reach families. It's probably the families that you have in person that are challenging are even more so online, and it could be because they have barriers, because they have other things going on at home. If they're working during the day and the babysitter can't get the kids online, there's all sorts of barriers we have to getting parents involved virtually. Perfect. Yeah, not knowledgeable about the technology. We'll talk about that as well. Good. And Jen says her communication with families has improved since going virtual. Good. So yeah, I think it's different. We'll say it's different. I wouldn't say either better or worse, but perhaps different, and we have to figure out how we best negotiate that. All right, and some of you have started this typing that in. What are some barriers you are facing this year to family engagement? So we had some not knowledgeable with the technology. Absolutely, that was one. Go ahead and type in what else you're finding. Having different priorities or commitments. Zoom fatigue we could throw over there as well. Okay, and somebody put in food shortages in the home as well. Yeah, we'll talk about this a lot because really we have to meet those basic needs first before we can move past those and get parents engaged at the levels that we want them to be. Difficulties with schedules, feeling overwhelmed. Absolutely. Perfect. Yeah, we definitely have different barriers this year than we've had in the past. I think some of the barriers to family engagement that we have in the past are things like transportation. Parents aren't able to get themselves to school if you're holding an activity. That's no longer an issue because those activities aren't at school, but now we have the problem of can they connect? Can they get on to the Zoom call or the Google Meet, whatever it might be? Scheduling is the same. Schedule and time have always been barriers in family engagement and also in life, and that has not changed. With the pandemic, it just looks a little bit different. And here's a couple that I threw up there as well. Zoom fatigue, or whatever you want to call it, it is definitely real. We are all overloaded with digital and virtual everything, and I appreciate all of you being on at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I know you have been in this situation all day, so that is much appreciated. Pandemic fatigue and pandemic stress are huge as well. We've been at this for over a year now. People are tired and people are really struggling these days. Lack of access, and this can be thought of in many ways. It could be lack of access to the school building in general. It could be lack of access to the teachers. Even though you could see them online, it doesn't feel the same as them seeing you every day at drop-off. Lack of access to reliable internet or computers or iPads. And lack of consistency really makes a difference for our families as well. Lack of confidence, especially for those who are not of the dominant culture and language of the program. The virtual platform adds an extra layer of challenge for our English language learning families. And those who have trouble with the technology, it kind of scares them to get their kids on every day or to participate in activities outside of their normal school activities because they might not feel comfortable with that, with the technology or how we're running school these days. So what stays the same pre and during pandemic in terms of family engagement? So think back to your goals that I had you reflect on at the very beginning. Those are hopefully grounded in those principles of family engagement that we discussed. Those should really still be the same. They might look a little bit different, but your underlying goals of reaching out to families, involving them in various levels in your program, involving them in the decision-making process, and really doing it all for improved student outcomes, that should still be your goal. That should be relatively unchanged. We still need to utilize our community resources to support families. Reaching out and connecting to those needed resources is still critical right now. Those hard to reach families, those families that are struggling, if you help connect them to the community resources they need, that will help build your trust, and it will help them engage with you and engage with their child's educational experience. So meeting those needs through community resources are critical. We still need to acknowledge, as I said, that families are important. They are still a critical part of their child's educational experience, and probably more so this year than any other year, and I think it will continue into next year as well. You know, they're not just dropping them off at school every day. Some of them are still on the computer part-time, full-time, so we really need families to be involved, and we want to acknowledge that, you know, they are critical components of their child's educational experience. And again, our first step must always be to meet those concrete needs, the essential needs of families, the food, the diapers, whatever our families are in need of. If they don't have the technology tools, we need to be sure we get them to them. From there, the second step is to identify additional needs, to develop and nurture the relationship by listening to and acknowledging families. These are all keys to good family engagement. So a lot stays the same, but some things have obviously definitely changed. We are now very reliant on technology to meet our goals. And that's a bit of a problem for us because, as we just saw, quite a few of you typed in that technology is one of your biggest barriers. So how do we rectify the fact that we are now very reliant on technology and the fact that some of our families don't have the technology or don't know how to use the technology? So one of the things we need to do is figure out, how do we get technology in their hands? Or we start with, let's have a parent education workshop on technology. You can create a form that you send home to parents with visuals, so not just typing out step 1, log into Zoom, step 2, enter your username. Actually put visual cues on that paper for families so that they can look at it and they can see exactly what they need to do. And that will help with our English language learning families as well, because we know it can be difficult for them if we have these whole bunch of directions for them just to get them logged into school or get them logged onto our family engagement activity or our parent education. So doing what we can to give families visuals and support as needed. It's also a bit harder for us to incentivize parents to participate in some of our family engagement activities. For those of you who have had experience with parent advisory committees in the past or parent education trainings, a good way to get parents in those meetings was through offering them food, contacting the restaurants in your community and asking them to donate dinner. And if you tell parents, we've got dinner for you, they're more likely to show up that night. But we can't do that anymore. So how are we incentivizing parents to get onto another Zoom call or another Google Meet at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night when we know they've had a lot going on during the day and that they are Zoomed out and pandemiced out? So we need to think about how we can incentivize parents to be involved. We also need to think about what opportunities are left for decision making at the program level. As I said earlier, a lot of our hands have been tied this year on what decisions are made at the program level. And those hands are tied by, not just by, I wouldn't even say administration, because administration doesn't have their hands tied, or they're not tying their hands. It's really the local and state health guidelines that have really dictated what we have and have not been able to do this year. And it's been a challenge for administration, and it's been a challenge for teachers. So being ready to pivot at any time, depending on what the guidelines are and what we are able to do, has definitely changed how we plan for and engage families during this time. I just scrolled down. My chat got stopped, so I'm just catching up on you. Food and babysitting. Yeah, so childcare was a huge incentive prior to the pandemic when you would have parent trainings. You can say you're offering dinner and childcare, and the parents knew they would have a safe place for their child to go. But now they don't really need the babysitting because they are at home. They'll be distracted by their children, but they know their children are safe. So that's one big barrier that has changed, that maybe for the better. But I know they all enjoy their time of, an hour or two off from their children. So Great. Thank you all for all your great comments in the chat. I love the participation. So families have had to be involved at a level that they never have been before. This is a huge change. Gone are the days where they drop the kid off at school and pick them up 2.5 hours later and ask their kids how their day was. It is imperative to be clear and upfront with parents about your expectations of them and their role in your program. So whether they start in the fall or they start later in the year, always be clear about what you need from them in order for their child and for you to be successful this school year. But parents also need our help and our support. We need to give them the guidance, explicit directions, tools, and resources for them to effectively be engaged in their child's learning. We cannot assume that all of our parents are early childhood educators because the vast majority of them are not. So we need to make sure that we are explicit and clear with what we are asking them to do. At the beginning of any school year, teachers look at and identify each child's individual instructional level. We plan and individualize for each student based on age, ability level, areas of delay, etc. We need to do the same thing for families, especially now. We're asking a lot of them. They're not all at the same level. They're not all at the same place. We need to identify their unique needs and what they can contribute to their child's education. So don't assume that all your families have the same abilities. So find out what they need. Find out, do you need to get them a hotspot? Do they need to know how to turn a laptop on? So really critical is finding out where each of your family is and then individualizing what you're doing for each of those families. All right, so here is our text box. I know you guys have wonderful things you've thrown in the chat, but I want you to stick them in our chat box that Karen is going to pull up as well. What is working for you this year in your program? How have you successfully engaged? Okay, while you're still typing in the chat box, I was just looking at the public chat. Laura had a great idea. She said she has recorded video of herself of showing parents how to log into certain apps on devices. Absolutely. And arrival and dismissal procedures. Yeah, I think the more visuals we can give parents, the better, just like our students, right? A lot of text can be challenging for many of our families, so anytime we can give them a video or visual is a great idea. And yeah, Jen, lots of families relying on their daycare providers to help with the child's learning, which adds another level of challenge with us. But that being said, this is why it's so important to engage families, because while the daycare providers are helping the students with their perhaps remote or hybrid learning, we still want those families to be involved at some level. So that would be the same as if they were coming to school for 2.5 hours. We still want the families to be coming in and engaged in various ways. So. All right, let me read through our responses here. Ready Rosie is a great one. So for those of you that are not familiar, Ready Rosie comes from the creative curriculum, and they've really spent a lot of time creating what they call playlists for families, and it sends home activities for families to do at home with a video for parents to watch. So it'll give the activity and then it'll show the parents how to essentially recreate it in their home. So that is a wonderful one. You can look it up if you don't have it, but it is not free, I will tell you that much. So lots of virtual activities, so virtual book fair, nutrition, family connection time was just story, music, activities together, parent and child together activities. That's great. So you know, having a regular time set aside, say it's like every Wednesday at 5 o'clock, and you can have different activities that you're doing that are really specific parent-child activities. Teaching parents sign language, great. Oh, and sending all activities home. Yes, so this goes along with giving the parents the tools and resources they need. We can't expect parents to engage in activities with us if we don't give them the materials ahead of time. Let me check over here. Connie says private Facebook groups to share remote activities. Yep, that's a great way to do it. Good, and Beatrice is also including some of that health and safety information as well. Super important this year. Great, thank you all for your participation on that. Here are some of the ideas that I put up for you, and many of these you guys said. So virtual activities, really almost anything you've done in the classroom or in the school or program, you can do virtually, just in a different way. So if you had family bingo nights in the past, family exercise, pajama parties, dance nights, those are all things that you could be including, but in a virtual capacity. Again, hands-on virtual activities, as long as we give them the materials ahead of time. If we can deliver the materials to the families, all the more better, because it makes it easier for those families who are struggling and who are hard to reach. Parent advisory committees, or whatever you might call your parents who are involved in the program as a whole, those can absolutely still be done virtually. We've had quite a few comments about virtual field trips. Those are a great idea. And again, you want to stress to parents that those are family engagement activities. It's not just for their child to sit and watch the computer like they do for their school every day, but we really want families to be involved with their children during those virtual field trips or virtual hands-on activities. Surveying parents, this one is definitely critical for engaging families, and it starts right at the beginning. We need to survey them on what their needs are, but surveying them throughout their experience as well to see how their needs have changed, if something's working for them or not working for them, so you can adjust accordingly. And again, your parent education can of course be done virtually as well, and community resources are critical. They always have been. Almost everything is virtual these days as well, so if you want to put together a directory for parents so they know who to reach out to and where to find the resources that they need, now is a really good time to put one together if you don't have one. Somebody does something called parent cafes, where there's not really a structure or agenda like a parent training normally would have, but it's really just a time for parents to get online and talk with one another. And this was especially important at the beginning of the pandemic. Everyone's feeling very isolated. So giving parents that opportunity just to, oh, Michelle says she has it very well attended, just to get together and talk about what their challenges are and talk about what's going well. And really it's a space for parents, and those have been quite successful. So here we have an example of one program who took the Positive Solutions for Families curriculum, which comes from CSEFL, that they would normally do in person throughout the year, and turned it into a YouTube series. So we're going to watch a couple minutes of that.
Everyone, and welcome to another episode of Positive Solutions for Families. Let's get started. As we mentioned yesterday, because it's so hard to find time to play with our child, we have to make the most out of every single moment. Let's practice putting powerful parenting practices of play into action. We're going to be looking at some typical play situations and see how we can improve them. Scene number 1, Max and his dad, and action.
Dad, are you gonna play with me today?
Yeah, son. I'll play with you, but the game's on. Hold on. Yeah, hold on.
Look, Dad, look what I made.
Yeah, son, that's nice. Yeah.
Dad, you didn't see it. The parts go vroom, vroom, vroom really fast.
I see it. Now let Dad finish watching his show. Go play over there by the table.
Questions to think about. What happened? Was this a positive play situation? Why or why not? How do you think Max felt? What was Dad doing? Was Max's creative play reinforced? Did this situation help build a positive relationship? What could Dad have done differently? Tip number 1, follow your child's lead. Wait, watch, and join your child's play. Dad told Max that he would join him in his play. But when Max invited him to do so, he declined. he did not follow his lead. Tip number 4. I know that after 1 is not 4. However, for the purpose of these examples, we're going to be moving around the different tips so that we can make sure that they all relate accordingly. Tip number 4. Watch your child's cues to see if your child is becoming disinterested in the play situation. Dad was involved in the television show and he totally missed Max's cues. The cue of inviting his dad to join him again, and the cue of his child just getting so desperate that he left. What do you think might have happened if Dad had followed Max's lead and paid attention to his cues? Max and his dad, scene 2.
You know what, son? Let me turn off the TV.
Max, that is really cool. What is it gonna be? It is a super fast airplane and it can go faster than Superman. Faster than Superman? I think that's pretty fast. I like these colors too. There's red and blue. Mine too, but I also like green and yellow. Can I build something too? Yeah. You can build an airpuerto. An airport? Well, I think I might need some help. Where should I put it? You can build it over there, and here's some blocks.
Okay, so that's one example. That's from Javier Ramos. Maybe Karen could type in where he works. I don't remember where he's at now. He works for Preschool for All programs. So the Positive Solutions for Families curriculum is a ongoing curriculum. You could spread it out throughout an entire year. You could do one session a month. You could do 6 weeks in a row, one night each week. But when the pandemic hit, obviously that wasn't able to happen. So he took that curriculum. Oh, he's no longer in early childhood. That's a shame. He took that curriculum last spring and he created videos for his families. They're also available on YouTube, so you can search him up. But this is a great example of how we can take something that we can't do in person and give it to parents in a way that is useful for them. Yep, they are available in English and Spanish, and he does a really great job of modeling the messages that that curriculum is trying to pass on to parents. So on-demand recordings are great to attempt to engage those families who have difficulty, quote unquote, showing up to live events, but it's also a good idea to plan follow-ups with them. So either giving them an activity to complete at the end, checking in on the homework if they have that to do during their recording, just so the parents are feeling like, you know, okay, I'm watching it, but then what am I doing with the information? So following up with the families who are going ahead and utilizing these great recordings that are presented to them. Yep, great examples. Yeah, he did a fantastic job. Here is another one. This is something we started in my program. We call it the Parents Pop-Ups. We started them as on-demand trainings that were created in response to family needs as they arise or are appropriate. So we call them pop-ups because we kind of never know when we're going to do them or when we will need to do them. So these are very brief videos. We keep them under 5 minutes. We do them on a variety of topics. For example, we had a screenshot up of one was done on celebrations. Going into winter break, we had quite a few families who were feeling extra stress around the holidays, which is natural, but also some extra stress because of the pandemic. You know, they still weren't seeing their families at that time. They weren't sure how they were feeling about having their kids home for 2 weeks with no structure, since, you know, even remote school was not going to be happening at the time. So we just threw something together for them to help them, you know, give them some coping strategies and adjust their expectations. We'll do another one soon on kindergarten expectations for those kids that are going to be moving on next year. But Karen's going to put a little clip for us just so you can get a little audio on what this involves.
To another edition of our We Kids Parents Pop-Up. Our topic this time around is read-alouds. National Read Aloud Day is coming up on February 3rd. The purpose of this day is to bring attention to the importance of reading aloud to children and the benefits for young children. The ability to read does not start in kindergarten or first grade. The skills necessary for reading start at birth, and reading aloud is an effective way to lay the foundation for future reading success. In our preschool program, some of the skills we typically look for are a child's use of books. Can they hold a book correctly? Do they turn pages one at a time? Do they understand that books can be read and that print has meaning? Do they know the difference between print and pictures? Can they point to the words on the page as you read? Will they look at pictures and pretend to read? Can they use those pictures to make predictions? Read alouds also help us develop attending and listening skills, and it also develops vocabulary as it increases the types and number of words heard each day. There have been numerous studies that young children who are read to daily hear hundreds of thousands of more words by the time they enter kindergarten.
So again, these are topics that we might normally do in a parent training, but we keep them very brief so that parents are more likely to watch them, as they're checking their emails on their phone. If they have just 3 or 4 minutes and they know that's all the time it's going to take, they might be more likely to listen to them. We kind of pack them full of stuff versus, say, an hour-long training. So we're really using this this environment we're in to our advantage in trying to get parents the information that we hope to get them in a way that is accessible to them and that they will engage in. So again, these are just quick and timely, easy to access, quick little parent trainings. Another way to engage families is through social media. We know almost all of them are on it. These are from 2 early childhood organizations in Elgin. We can see that they're utilizing social media to engage their families in various ways. The first one is promoting meeting basic needs, right? They're showing pictures of a diaper drive that they had and all the donations that were made and the families that benefit from that. And then we have in the middle, we have, quick little snippet of some child development info. And then on the right, some learning activities, because we know the learning activities are also critical to their child's success and to effective family engagement. So using that social media to your advantage. So some tips, and we've kind of gone through all these, but I wanted to summarize them all for you here. For successful family engagement during this time, but really any time, especially for those hard to reach families. We've already highlighted these throughout, but here they are for you. So expectations, start with this at the beginning of the year or when the families enter your program. Be clear and upfront about what you're expecting from them. Show them your Zoom expectations chart. Make things visual. Make those recordings for them to help with their accessibility and understanding. You need to nurture their relationships. We want to listen and acknowledge to families and their needs, and don't judge them. I know this can be hard with some families, especially the ones who we struggle with, who don't show up all the time, who don't engage in activities. We still need to be supportive of them and trust that we can help them and help engage them more in what we want them to do. We need to ask families what they need to be successful and ask them repeatedly. So their responses at the beginning of the year might not be the same as their responses 4 months in, because at the beginning of the year, they might not know what they need to be successful. So being sure to do those check-ins with families is important. And communication is key. So our next poll question for you: do you find, Karen's going to pull it up, do you find families to be more or less responsive to email messages this year? And again, there's no right answer, it's just what you find. And this is kind of just a curiosity question on my part. Interesting. Okay, great. So it looks like the majority of you are finding them that they're more responsive this year than in the past, and that could very well be because we are engaging them in different ways. We're seeing them more often. They're aware that they need to be involved with us in various ways, making them more responsive. Those of you that have found them to be less responsive, that could be because they're messaged out, right? Especially if they have multiple kids. There are so many emails coming from so many different places that it's really hard to keep up with managing emails or whatever form of communication you're using to communicate with families. It could also be that if you're doing remote or hybrid learning, the families are seeing you every day, so they probably feel like they don't really need to respond to your email because they're going to see you on the computer in 20 minutes. Great. All right, so communication is key. We need to focus on what you are communicating with families, same as pre-pandemic. You want to talk about standards, you want to talk about curriculum, student expectations, practices, policies, and procedures, and how they can enhance learning at home. We want to share info in a variety of ways. This digital age has alleviated the problem of missing or lost papers for us. They can search their email or Seesaw, whatever you're using, to find what they are looking for. And there should be flexibility in your communication use and being available and responsive to families in a variety of ways. That does not mean you need to be responsive to them 24 hours a day during the regular school day, my friends. And along with flexibility is consistency and variety. And here is what I mean with this. All right. These probably look very familiar to you, right? Some of them, maybe not all of them, but probably quite a few. And I'm sure that many of you are likely using more than one of these on a daily basis. The key, and they're all great, they all have their advantages and they have different reasons for using them. The key here is being consistent in what kinds of messages you are sending and where. We don't want to make this more challenging for parents. So pick what platform you're going to use and for what. For activities or sharing of data and documentation, maybe you're going to use Seesaw or ClassDojo. For program news or newsletters, are you going to use the same platform, or will those be through email or a different way? If you're hybrid with rotating days, where's the calendar going to be posted? Is it going to be posted on Seesaw? Is it going to be on your Google Classroom? Is it going to be sent through email? So you need to make the plan of what sorts of material you are sending where so parents can consistently find it. Don't send them one day on Seesaw what materials they need for the next day and then send it on email the next day. So be consistent in your platforms, identify their purposes, and stick to it. This will lead to much less frustration for parents and for you, because then they're going to show up when you need them to show up. So continue with our tips. Again, we need to make sure we're meeting those concrete needs first. We're accessing our community resources. We're developing relationships. We're providing families with the materials to be successful. And we also want to make sure that we're still looking for the moments of joy or using the good news strategy. So again, parents are seeing their kids a lot more than they probably expected to the past 13 months. And we still want to make sure that we're pointing out the joy or the good news, like giving them the opportunity to reflect on their child and how their child has grown and what their child is doing. So we want to be sure to incorporate that. And then finally, using tech to our advantage. And I know you all have said that technology is a challenge, and it sure is, but we also want to make sure that we are using it to our advantage, because in a lot of ways it's kind of what we got right now. So let me check my time. Karen, I'm going to skip the next poll just for the sake of time, but I want you guys to think about how you can use technology in your program to increase family engagement. So keep that in mind. And in order to do so, first off, we need to gather info on tech needs. And that could be the hardware. Do they need iPads? Do they need headphones? Do they need hotspots? So gathering that sort of info, but also gathering info on what their capabilities are or their abilities are around the tech. As you guys said, if they don't know how to use it, it doesn't really matter if we give it to them. If they don't know how to turn it on, if they don't know how to get into your Google Meet or get onto Zoom. So we need to make sure that we are giving them all of the tools and resources they need to be successful. Tech opens up a communication pathway for us, and it creates connection. You have the potential to see more parents more often than you may have in the past. For those of you that had busing, you might not have ever seen your parents. If they're dropped off, yeah, you got to see them in the mornings for drop off and then in the afternoon for pickup. And those are pretty quick interactions, but with the technology, we're able to see them much more often as they help their students get on class, or we provide additional virtual activities for them. Technology serves as an additional resource to link to community resources, to connect with other parents, since we often can't do it in person, and to provide additional learning opportunities for the students. And then finally, parents love to brag and share about their kids, right? Facebook, Instagram, all that. Parents are always taking pictures of their kids, so use that to your advantage. Ask them to send you pictures of their child engaging in learning activities. And think of the wealth of information and what we can do with pictures like this that are sent from families. we can go back and we can give them some parent education. I'm like, oh my gosh, look at how your child is focused and using her pincher grasp as she picks up those beads. That's going to help her when she starts writing letters. So you can do so much with the parents' information that they give you, that they think they're just taking a cute picture of their kid, but we can do so much with that. We can provide so much support and education in that way. And again, earlier we mentioned the importance of learning activities as part of family engagement. Easy peasy this year when you're doing remote or hybrid learning. But we do want parents to be engaged in learning activities outside of the regular classroom Zoom sessions or even your in-person sessions. We want the learning to be happening throughout the day, ongoing. And this year has really given us the opportunity to highlight that and give parents the tools to do so. There are great resources out there for at-home learning activities. There's just a few on your screen here from Illinois Early Learning and from the Center, Resources for Teaching and Learning. They're great, quick at-home activities parents can access and do outside of your regular class time. And then I've mentioned a few times throughout our webinar the importance of surveying parents, asking parents questions. Again, the technology gives us the ability to do this. If you've done paper surveys in the past, you probably haven't gotten so many back because parents lose them or they forget to fill them out. If we can do it electronically, it makes it easier for parents, keep them quick and brief. So, as they have 3 minutes, 2 or 3 minutes, they can just click. But this gives us a lot of information. It tells us what parents' needs. It allows us to acknowledge what those needs are. And it also empowers parents as it helps them feel like they are part of their child's educational experience. It empowers them to be involved. If you were looking to make changes to your remote or hybrid classroom, asking them what's working and what's not working, that helps them feel empowered and like they're part of the program and helping to make those wider decisions. And they feel heard and valuable. Just a final review for you. So as you're thinking about family engagement and processing the past hour where I have talked very, very quickly, start with defining and refining your goals. Again, those should be grounded in those principles of effective family engagement. We should be focusing on relationships and meeting basic needs. We should involve families in goal setting and decision making. Two-way communication, reciprocal engagement. It should be comprehensive, and we should utilize the resources that we have available to us during this time, including the tech and digital resources. And with that, I say thank you. Thank you for your time tonight, being so attentive and participating, but also for everything you do for young children and families. And here's a list of resources. Karen had many of these in your handouts. They're great. The Using Technology one is quick and easy read. And the Principles of Family Engagement are there.